ahead and pull up the right scene here. Boom, look at that. We're live. I'm the magical Mr. Mephisto if you're not into the whole brevity thing. Mephisto for short, or Andrew if you really want to get personal. And I'm here with Luke Stone, aka Cinderfall Gaming, aka I run every Facebook group you hate.
That would be me.
Yeah.
Hello, everyone.
Well, how are you? So how are you doing today, man?
Oh, not too bad.
See,
Tired. It's early in the morning.
yeah, you're in the upside down right now. So we're on two different sides of the spectrum. Me, I'm winding down my day, getting ready to like settle in. I've got my one of my favorite dad sweaters on. Actually, I chose this specially for you. It's a Green Bay Packers dad sweater. So just for you, because I knew I was gonna have Dad Hammer on, and then you're starting your day. So I'm ending my day, getting ready to like cook dinner and do all that, and you're starting your day. But you're in the future.
Yeah.
You're scouting the future.
Yeah. I'm a day ahead of you, so
Yeah.
we're seeing what this wondrous world is like in the future for you.
Is it pretty good so far? Like,
Um,
or should I be stocking up on bottled water?
Probably bottled water.
Bottled
I mean,
water.
It's coming up to Australian summer, so that's it's not a fun time.
So do all the critters like because you have like a million deadly animals and such? Do they start to get really active around this time then? Or
Yeah,
or is it just year round like mayhem, like a Predator movie?
The worst thing that exists around this time of year here is magpies.
What is that?
They are like like a bird, and they swoop ferociously at people.
So just like in Age of
No.
Sigmar, birds are the worst.
Yeah, they're actually the worst. Like they can get quite decently big as well, and yeah, they swoop you and will swoop you relentlessly.
Yeah, that's crazy. Oh yeah, the weird ass spiders and stuff the size of your toilet seat. Those are fine. It's the fucking birds you got to worry about.
Yeah, no, you know Australian likes magpies, like to the point where everyone hates the football team called the Magpies as well.
That's really funny. Like maybe they need a rebrand. That's really cool. And of course, when you say football, you mean like rugby, right? Like or soccer.
Australian rules football, so not rugby. I'm from South Australia, so rugby is like non-existent to me.
Okay, all right. See, I don't know how You go ahead.
Yeah, it's weird. Australia's got three things we call football. We've got football as in like the world game football, so soccer.
Yep.
To some parts of the world. We've got football as in Australian rules football, which is what most people would refer to football as. And then you've got rugby, but rugby is only football to the eastern states.
Okay, all right. See, that explains. Look at that cultural lesson. Now I know the difference. Because I don't like brazenly call football soccer. Like as an American, I do it because like it's the only way I know how to like distinguish it when I'm trying to like talk to people, like in different.
Yeah. Yeah. My same thing. It's just like if I'm talking to anyone American, it's just like I'll call it soccer, or Australian, I'll call it soccer.
Right.
But
right on.
You don't know when to call it football. You call it football to a European person. They're like it's. Call it soccer to a European person, like it's football.
Yeah, and then they go on like a giant tirade about how like, we just co-opted it. But it's actually really interesting, and the more you know, little rabbit hole here for you. Rugby and what we know it was like American football, and you have got your Australian rules football. They really did evolve from football. And I have a working hypothesis here, and it's based somewhat in some real research I did, but essentially, it started out soccer as Americans know it when it came over here, and they would play it in the prisons, and essentially like the modern Georgia was a prison colony, and then parts of Australia were prison colonies as well, and so basically you can see the evolution happened because of prison in terms of like America. Because they just like the guards would let the inmates get more physical with each other. And so what started out like European football very gradually became American football, adding more physicality. Rugby evolved along the same lines as well. And so it was just like they found that people rioted less if they let them hit each other in soccer. And like that's kind of how we got American football, which is why to this day it's still called like the gridiron, because the gridiron would have been the pitch or whatever.
Unbelievable!
In a prison setting. Oh, Rocco, you boy, thank you so much for the follow there. But little tangent aside, I kind of want to you to me. Like, my relationship with you evolved in a, like, kind of a strange way. And, like, I think it really kind of crystallized around the time where, like, Halo and I started making memes of Scourge Privateers during the tier list thing. I think that's when I really started talking to you a lot more. And you just became, like, Mr. Scourge Privateer. Or, like, we would put your name on the, like, Luke Stone, and we just, like, put you in the tier system instead of Scourge Privateers. How are the Scourge Privateers doing now post Cities? You get an update?
They're probably. I haven't actually run them. I need to the list is going to change quite dramatically, but I've got the list there set and planned, and I'll get back to them.
So has the Cities book like reinvigorated you to like try experimenting again? Because you really had your list pretty well figured out before, right?
Yeah, I ran the same list for pretty much the same list for like a year. But Cities has definitely changed up. I mean, there's one really good unit in Scourge Privateers that you can take in any Cities army now.
Yeah, so you take that one good unit, and other people are going to be poaching it. But like, as the Scourge Privateer purist, are you going to stick with them? You're going to like convert over some of the other stuff to complement the army. Like, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I might do a little bit, but I have got the plans in place to get a new Scourge Privateer army up and running. There'll be a few little bits that aren't Scourge Privateer in it, but there'll be mostly other Dark Elves coming into it.
Okay,
which is cool.
So you're going to focus on like the Dark Elves, or the Elves rather, and like kind of build out the Scourge Privateers and kind of complement them up.
Yeah, it'd be nice to. It's nice to not have to use ally points on that Sorceress and stuff like that.
Right on. So I've got a couple questions I want to ask you, but first I want to start with like, how did you receive the Cities book? Because I'm getting some, like, I didn't expect to get like the range of mixed reviews I'm seeing now that I'm like out of my internet blackout from last week, just of busyness. I've started to like actually pay attention, and I'm seeing some polarized results. I think overall it's still trending towards positive for the community. Like, most people are still pretty pumped about it, but there is some like a little bit of like that other like, oh, you know, I feel like, you know, we kind of delved into it in my last rantcast, so I won't rehash it. But what's your read on the book? What's your outlook on it?
Well, positive, like, for the most part. It is a book, and that alone is a good thing. Like, so many of these factions that are part of it, whether it be Scourge Privateers, Wanderers, Free Peoples, Serpentis, whatever, that actually made it into the book, like, it's a good thing for them, for the most part. Like, I don't think any of them probably got anything wholly bad in the book.
Well, Charybdis, right? Like, got worse.
Like, Charybdis is worse, but I think the rest of Scourge Privateers is probably okay. You could argue that Executioners got worse, but in the whole, Darkening Columns probably got better.
Okay, fair enough.
And yeah, mostly positive. Like, there are some missed opportunities. I feel the ability to customize is limited. With the whole only being able to choose the cities, the fact there isn't like a generic allegiance ability, like generic.
There's no master clan. There's no like master clan for this book, which is, I think, kind of awkward. But
yeah, but on the other hand, this book is, you said it yourself, it's the most important book for world building and like the lore, because you need that ground sort of level army. Because otherwise, Stormcast don't seem amazing and over the top if you don't have baseline in the game.
What is a normal unit of a bunch of great men with swords and fancy hats look like? Yeah. I mean, and that's a take that I didn't delve into a whole lot on last week, which is like, what does this do for? Like, we talked a lot about like lists and armies and hobby. We talked a good deal about hobby, I think, but what we didn't talk about was, you know, what it does for like actually the world of Age of Sigmar and fleshing out what this world is. And I have a take where, you know, I still haven't read a single Black Library book. I've got some recommendations. I'm going to actually have to physically commit it to a list and prioritize and start reading through some Black Library books. In my life, I've never read one. Okay. A lot of how I consume the lore of Age of Sigmar comes through the battle tomes and like the rules and the little flavor text before a unit description. Like I remember in Warhammer Fantasy Battle, you had your actual artifact cards as a like a page at the very end of the book where you're supposed to be able to like tear this out. I don't know if you played that far back or not, but you had the artifact card. And so, like, the Hand of Nagash, like, the Black Hand of Nagash, which we now know as the Hand of Dust, the Black Hand of Nagash had, like, a little flavor blurb on that card that said its rules. And that's because there wasn't a book at the time with Nagash's origin story. That was kind of like how you put together the pieces of who Nagash was and, like, why he's missing his hand and why it's an artifact you can take, is you had these little, like, islands of lore, and you'd find them throughout other people's battle tomes. There'd be a story about, you know, undead in the Skaven book, and there'd be a story about the undead in the Empire's book. And I actually really enjoyed consuming Warhammer lore that way, personally. And so, like, I have this it might be my perspective that making a book for an army or making a book for a faction, it trenches them in the lore. Because to an extent, some Black Library fiction, they do this thing where they go, it's not canon, it's just essentially, you know, what if fun stories for you to read. And I'm like, well, I want it to be concrete, not in 10 years you can be like, oh yeah, well that wasn't canon, you know? I feel like if you give it rules, you make it real.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's what Cities really does. Like Firestorm was always sort of seen as, which is the precursor to Cities, was always sort of seen as like, oh, bit of this, bit of that, and now you've got this like permanent bits of lore that are just entrenched, and now everyone's fighting for them.
Right.
And some of them are like quite cool, like cities. Like you have the story of like Greywater Fastness, which is a city that's like completely opposite to the realm it's in, being an industrial city in the middle of the realm of life.
Yeah. Well, that actually kind of reminds me a little bit of like War, like a RTS, where you have this industrial city show up and start like mining all the trees and or extracting all the trees and stuff like that. Yeah, no, that's cool. So you got like mostly a positive read with Cities. Is there anything that just like stands out in the book that you just like you just like when you got it you're like, this is exactly what I wanted?
The ability to mix the cities up. Like I've got my Scourge Privateer army, but I also was like toying around with Mixed Order a bit and stuff like that. And I've got like the narrative of the city, and I've got like all these different factions that I couldn't sort of take together in a coherent force before, but I knew in the lore that they all fought together in the city, but I couldn't actually make it a thing. And so it's nice to be able to go, I've got this mixed arms force that fights together, and I can actually play it together now with some rules, and it works.
Yeah, it's nice to go like to evolve beyond like the classic Mixed Order. I think, right, to be like a more concrete, real thing. I think I mentioned Skaven earlier, the way they did Master Clan and Scryer throughout, and we won't talk about Eshin, but how they approached that like one really big. I mean, Skaven could practically be it like another Grand Alliance, right? But like they kind of I think spiritually did that a little bit with the Cities book, where this is the way. You don't want to be quite full on Mixed Order. You want to feel more like you're like an actual real army, and the Cities book did do that well. I think we're going to see some like pretty sweet builds and play styles. We're going to see a good range of uniqueness from players. And then the competitive scene, I do think you're going to start to see, in quotation marks, the list, right? Someone's going to win a tournament with like a particular list, and we're going to start seeing people start copying that list. But overall, I do think you'll see a great range. And just from my cursory glance at the book, I think there's two really strong ways to build Age of Sigmar for a competitive build. But I'm more interested in seeing I'm more interested in just seeing some of these older, cooler models on the table again.
Yeah, and that's probably the main thing. It's an easy gateway back in for some people, or some people just have this army lying around ready to go. But I think, like you're sort of like linking to Skaven there, I think the thing with cities is it's going to be very much like Skaven, where we're not going to see the best lists because most people don't own all the factions.
Right.
They own like Dispossessed, and they might have the couple of good units that are from Dispossessed. There aren't many, but they might have the good units from that.
Iron Drakes aren't bad. Iron Drakes are pretty
so they
alright.
might have Iron Drakes and like a few bits of that, but they won't have like the free guild sort of stuff they need for the list or
To round it out, yeah.
And you'll probably find that like a lot of people will forego building these the more combined list just out of faction loyalty. You're talking about that in your last one.
Mm-hmm.
You'll find that Wood Elf players like forego Executioners or Greatswords for the sheer purpose of Wild Rangers or a Wood Elf.
Right. Yeah, I think you'll see some faction loyalty there, but again, I do think you're gonna, you'll see this. Yeah, Skaven's a great parallel for all the same reasons you outlined. People have they don't necessarily have the right combo, and we're gonna start to see those emerge, and that'll be fun to see. I think that's gonna be a fun little journey for these next 6 months, is seeing what people come up with and seeing people's personality and seeing this kind of resurgence.
Yeah.
So, you said you played Scourge Privateer for about that one list for about a year, and I've just in my mind you've always been the Scourge Privateer guy, but you want to tell me a little bit about how you got into Age of Sigmar and then why you ended up the Scourge Privateer guy? Is this you were a long time Warhammer Fantasy Battle guy and then you yeah.
Yeah. So my original induction into wargaming was Hero Quest way back. I was probably 5 or 6 years old, so 20, 21 years ago.
I love how many people I discover found they ended up in Age of Sigmar or Warhammer because of Hero Quest. That just it makes me really happy, because for me that was that gateway between Dungeons and Dragons and tabletop RPGs, and then wargaming as well. So I just like seeing that common ground. I'm sorry, continue.
Yeah, so I got into that. I grew up with 3 of my cousins that are the same age, so we all played Hero Quest together. I used to play the elf. That was my thing. Mm-hmm. And then from there we went to try and go find some expansions for it. And we went to Game Store and we saw the models on the thing, and then we're like, oh, these are cool, and they were Warhammer. And from there, 2 of my cousins then got for Christmas, they split an Empire and Orc starter set, and then me and my other cousin were like, oh, well, we want to pick enemies as well. And he got Lizardman, and I actually got Skaven. Skaven were my first army.
That's interesting. So you,
not my first models.
OG rat filth army.
Yeah, rattling guns and all that sort of stuff back in 4th or 5th edition fantasy when they were really good. Well, Skaven were always good in fantasy. There's probably never a time they weren't.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I remember being obsessed with the I owned the Ikit Claw model from that era because I loved that model. I thought it was so cool, and I had a pet rat named Sir Ikit Claw. I added the honorific. Yeah, so did you then stay with the whole way through? You just Warhammer Fantasy Battle, or did
Yeah, I pretty much stayed up until maybe my last few years of high school. And then you sort of study focusing and all that sort of stuff. You just don't have quite as much time. You get your first job and...
Yes, yeah.
I was quite into sports as well as a kid, so that sort of took a lot of my time. I was the kid that would, not go home until the lights went out because I'd be out playing sport.
Right on.
Or just kicking soccer balls everywhere.
Terrorizing the neighborhood.
Yeah. So... a little bit near the end of my high school years, I sort of dropped off a bit. And then when I got back out of high school and I got my first apprenticeship and stuff like that, got back into fantasy. And I got back into fantasy, I think, at 7th.
Okay.
So I sort of missed most of 6th edition fantasy. That's probably where I missed most of it. And then 7th, and then 8th, and then into Age of Sigmar.
Did you just go right from okay end times and you pick up Age of Sigmar right away in the Dark Ages, or did you wait for, or did you stay like loyal to Warhammer Fantasy Battle?
Picked it up straight away, but I didn't sort of move away from it. It's sort of like the way my local store went is we used to run like big narrative sort of campaigns in the group of us. And just after Age of Sigmar came out, while we were still learning all the lore for that world, we were doing a 40k one. So I moved away from Age of Sigmar, probably about a bit after lore, went to 40k because that's what we were doing. And then Age of Sigmar, once the GHB came out, I never had anything else on my mind.
Yeah, I think that was a big moment for Age of Sigmar. So yeah, and you're also kind of like, I mean, I know in my like circle of like online friends, if I have a lore question, you're one of the people I'll go to. You're a pretty big lore buff too. Like you like the war aspect of the game.
Yeah, it is the connection to the game. Like the game's a game, but without the lore, it's not truly a hobby for me.
So you need that little something extra, you know, there's that connection. Yeah, awesome. So then, how do you go from, you know, playing Age of Sigmar? When did the Scourge Privateers happen? Like when did that loyalty occur?
So I was from fantasy, in my time in playing fantasy, I have High Elves, Dark Elves, Wood Elves, and Empire. So I do have an entire Free Cities force ready to go. But everything except Dispossessed, but like I said, there's nothing worth taking there anyway.
Ouch, shots fired again at dwarves. This is 2 weeks in a row people have just been taking shots at the dwarves.
Sorry, they have two good units. They have gyrocopters and a cogsmith. That is the only units you will ever take from Dispossessed in a mixed list.
There you go. Well, the cogsmith, especially with the steam tanks, it's pretty good, I hear.
Yeah. But yeah, and I forgot where I was going now.
Well, you owned all of the you owned all your elves. You had Empire, and then Scourge Privateer happened somewhere.
That started sort of like probably just after GHB last year, and obviously LOE was doing his stats, and it's sort of he's like, oh, look at the. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to do stats for something that you will never see again.
This is where you ruined his stats for like 1 week because you were the only data point for Scourge Privateers.
Yep, I'm like, no, but this. And then I sort of also like the whole year thing came from Rob from the Honest Wargamer was playing his Chaos Force route, and he's like, I challenge everyone to play an army for a year and see how good you get with them. Mm-hmm. He's like, you'll be a better player regardless of how good the army is, regardless of how good the list is. You'll get better with them, and you'll become a better player by just sticking with a faction because you'll know that faction in and out.
Yeah. How did I believe in the take. I think there's a few other people who would really agree with it, and sticking with something through like the good times and the bad times. You know, a year is just an arbitrary value to slap on it, but learning that army from that second tier, or that sort of like I call it like when you learn the army sideways. When you like, I can't solve all the problems of the meta right now with my army, and then you have to get really creative and start thinking about the game on a different level. That's when you know you've figured out your army. I think that's when you've begun to master your army.
Yeah, and to top it off with Scourge Privateers, the aim for them was to be ready for CanCon. The largest Age of Sigmar event in the world was going to see Scourge Privateers at it.
That's great. So there's a little bit of an achievement moment for you, where you're like, I brought Scourge Privateers to the biggest tournament in the world.
Yeah, I didn't just take them to like some little one day. They went to a 200 player event.
That's awesome. I like that this is basically your Scourge Privateer love was born of spite. That's one of the greatest reasons to build and play an army I think I can think of.
Yeah. And then gradually, like as I was building the army, they released. Like I also read like what's it called? City of Secrets, and then Carson Toll Silver Shard, and then while I was actually building the army, Heart of Winter came out. which are all Black Library novels written by Nick Horth that all feature a Fleet Master as one of the main like characters.
And so
So
that
it's just cool.
yeah, it was like your narrative journey was mirroring your like hobby journey, like almost like organically, accidentally, and that's really cool. And now you've got that identity because it was this really like sort of this undertaking. It was an undertaking. It just it pulled you in. That's really neat.
Yeah, and that was, and then yeah, I've never really stopped playing them. Haven't played them since like the Cities book because I need to change the list up a bit. But
Right, and you got to keep evolving. It would be nice to always play the same army every like for 2 or 3 years, and in some respects, but also part of the joy of Age of Sigmar um, is that revitalization of having to solve a new problem or a new puzzle, and being able to rebuild yourself or rebuild your list and stuff. I think that stuff is cool, you know. Um,
yeah, I don't think you really need to rebuild a list every week or like whatever.
no.
Like once you've got the list, it probably should last until whenever the next GHB comes in and shakes things up, or the next big FAQ, depending on how big it is.
A big FAQ, a big release, or a GHB. I think those are your like time to shake your list up. And there is, Jack here in chat asked me earlier, what AOS army I recommend for having, for someone who has just finished Idoneth Deepkin, and for me, I knew it was time to build my Beast of Chaos. One, because the interest was there. I'm like, okay, I want to have all of the armies of death. Like I want every Legion of. I want to be able to field a version of everything. And sort of partway through that project, I have the models for a bunch of it, basically everything except for a Legion of Blood. And so I've got all my death avenues covered. I can play my Death March, which was always like my pocket pick because I just knew Nagash wasn't going to stick around. There was just too much outrage on the forums, right? Like you go to Facebook and you see people
We'll get to that.
Yeah, but we'll get to that. And then but like the big thing was like recognizing like, okay, I know future proofing. I was calling it future proofing at the time, as I was future proofing my army because I didn't want the GHB to come out and then now I can't play the thing I love. But I had gotten to that point where I had padded my collection and I knew I could roll with whatever the GHB did, and Beast of Chaos Tome came out. And really for me, Jack, it was organic. Knowing what my second army was going to be happened when I was reading through the tome and building lists. And so like, to put it in perspective, like IDK came out and like I built a list and I'm like, okay, I've figured this puzzle out. Slaanesh, before Slash Tome came out, I had solved the puzzle and boldly predicted it, and then it came out. I'm like, there's almost like no bad way to build this as long as you just take heroes. And like there's armies come along. Khorne is one of those that's a lot of fun to play too, because whilst Council of Blood or Tyrants of Blood, what they got changed to, is really awesome, there's still a few puzzles left in that book. But Beasts of Chaos to me was a book of endless puzzles. And that was really interesting for me, and that's where I decided my second army was going to be Beasts of Chaos. And as I was building them and sort of gaining my faction loyalty about this time last year, fall of last year, I think October, November is when the tome came out.
Oh, sorry, everyone.
No, you're fine. It was right around Dragonfall is how I remember it. I think it had just come out just before Dragonfall, which is October tournament. And I was just like, boom, I've got my next army. And then a huge point for that army as my second army, Jack, still kind of answering your question, was that it played differently from Legions of Nagash. Legion of Nagash is a slow attrition control army. And I wanted to play something that was like fast deployment chess, like in your face. And I could have went IJ. I think they're a little bit like that. I think there's certainly some armies that fill that role. But then reading that book, it's like the army almost began generating its own lore in my head, its own narrative, where I could like imagine, this army in one of my D&D games, which is usually like the last box to check. Is like, would this army be a villain in my D&D game for my players? And then once I have that box checked, it's like, okay, boom, that's it. And now I'm, obviously OBR. So yeah, I guess what I'm saying, Jack, is you should play OBR as your next army.
Um, OVR are looking quite good. They're looking. I will like second that. They look like they have a lot of options, and that's the thing for me that I look with armies is having a lot of options. Yes, I went down the Scourge Privateer rabbit hole, and they sort of they are restricted into what they play, and especially in the previous list, they were very restricted in what they had to play. I doubt you would find any list that wasn't the list that I was running that would be competitive.
Mm-hmm.
Not trying to sound up myself in any way there. It's just I played the army a lot. I honed that army so much to try and make it as good as it could possibly be.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the only person that I know was doing that in the world, so...
Can confirm we have the stats. we can go to the tape on this.
I'm the only person that... Other people want to run them at like smaller tournaments, but I am the only person with like a 2-day grand tournament level of playing them.
Right. And you got a GT finish of what, 4-1 once with them? I know you had a good
3-3 was the CanCon record.
Was that the one where you were like 2-0 or 3-0 on day one, and everyone's just like, what the hell is going on?
I was 2-1 on day one. 3-0 actually. Shout out to my good buddy Paul Grixty. He was Swifthawk agents, and they were 3-0 on day one at CanCon.
That was.
However, he then went to get. He then obviously when you do that, you go 3-0. You're starting to play with the big boys.
Yeah, you fly too close to the sun.
And he got burnt, and unfortunately, we both ended up on 3-3. So not only did CanCon have Scourge Privateers, it had Swifthawk agents at it as well.
That's awesome.
And what was the other weird one? And Everchosen as well. There was an Everchosen army.
Was there an STD in the wild too?
There are actually like 3 or 4 of them.
See, that's crazy. Every time someone brings STD, it's like I just want to pat them on the back. Not to be confused with STDs. That's a Slaanesh thing. No, like every time someone I'm just like, you go, little buddy. Like every time I see an STD list,
I can't wait for Slaves to Darkness. Like that'll be my gateway back into some Chaos factions. I like the Chaos Warrior look. I love all the new Darko stuff they've been doing. Sings to me.
I'm really, really selfish. I want them to get a really great 300-point monster that I can ally into my Beast of Chaos. That's really what I'm looking forward to. A lot of the Beast of Chaos spells don't target keyword anything. It's about hitting a unit with it. So Grashrak, for instance, is 18 inches, do D3 mortal wounds. Additionally, the unit has melee weapons that target this unit have +1 to hit. So that'll work on any ally, right? Tendrils of Atrophy, this thing has 1 less on saves. It's just so I'm looking for that, just that monster from STD or some just fatty that can fly and wreck some face.
Yeah. You might even get that the way they've been looking at cavalry lately. It might be just a unit of Chaos Knights that comes in and all of a sudden it's Rem 2 damage 3 or something on the charge.
just something bonkers. Just that one other piece to round it out. And then if it is mortals, natural, I'll go chopping off all their heads and giving them sweet ass goat heads. But but I digress on the subject of me.
Bestigor Knights just.
Oh,
I got that in the head now.
Yeah, wouldn't that be awesome? And just
armored Centaurs.
Buy 10 Wildfire Tauruses, and then put Bestigors on the Wildfire Taurus as if the Wildfire Taurus is the mount.
Yeah. No, this sounds good in my head. Back onto the subject of him talking about what army to get into. I always recommend trying to get in an army with lots of different options, and that's something that's really cool about cities. But armies like Stormcaster, the Bone Reapers, or Death in general is pretty good options. Whereas even Nighthaunt have a lot of options.
Yeah,
and even Auric Warclans now has a lot of options.
Yeah, with the Warclans book, IJ got the options it didn't have before, because a lot of IJ lists were pretty samey. Even the the 3 months we got to see a lot of the post GHB IJ lists. A lot of them were the same. It's like, did you spring for the Fungoid Cave Shaman or not? Did you have 2 War Chanters or just 1? But otherwise, it was pretty similar.
Yeah. I actually played Iron Jaws with my Free Cities the other day, and I think the best thing about him is it doesn't feel like you've played one Iron Jaws army, you've played them all anymore.
Yeah.
Which is sort of how they felt before.
Yeah.
There's options in that time, and it's cool. I've got a game against another Iron Jaws army lined up, which will probably be quite different. So I'm looking forward to that.
Right. Well, and just kind of finishing off this segue here, the IDK, you've got, if IDK is your first army, I feel like it's like you're stepping out of a greenhouse and into the garden, because it's IDK is a very focused army. It's great at what it does, and it's, to steal the Wolverine quote, it's the best that there is at what it does. And what it does is not nice. It's just what it does is very good, but that's kind of like all it does. If you're like, I want a spellcasting IDK list, it's like you're playing the wrong army. You have spellcasters, but you can't take advantage of like the spellcasting phase. If you're like, I just want like clouds of infantry, there's really no force multipliers for your standard infantry that make them more viable than, or as viable, or only like, a touch under as viable as the best thing. No, it really is night and day between the best IDK lists and like what I call the Neapolitan IDK list, where you're just trying to do something, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Like, they're just such a different army. So yeah, you're gonna go like whatever your next army is, and I can, if you send me a DM on Twitter or here on Twitch, I'll answer your question a little bit more in depth. But I could spend like an hour on exploring which army to play next.
That's a show in itself.
Right.
Probably a whole series of shows in itself.
Yeah. So you play IDK. What should you play next?
On a good note, if you are thinking of something to go look into for a faction, shout out to good buddy AOS Coach. Go give his faction focused videos a look. They'll help you point you in the right way.
Right. And I do think there's something to be said for just opening up a couple battle tomes at the LGS and see what resonates, what speaks to you. Maybe don't impulse buy it on the spot, but open it up, flip through it, see what really speaks to you, because that's one of those that's one of those great connections we do have with our LGSs, right? You can just go boom, put the book on the shelf, buy something else you came in there for, then go do your research on the internet, watch some videos and then go, wait, did my knee-jerk reaction to what I read in the book fit my expectation? And then you watch a couple of AOS Coach videos, you maybe check out Heywo, DM somebody in the community that you think has a pretty good handle on things, and then from there make your decision, jump in.
All right, we'll use that as a nice little segue. You can jump onto like the Facebook groups or Discord channels and stuff like that, and really use them. Like, yes, there will be some people that just don't know what they're talking about, for lack of a better way, and you get sort of mixed views, but you'll generally find like there'll be quite a few people that'll sort of point you in the right direction on those sort of forums.
Well, see, and that actually kind of that is the perfect lead in to kind of one of the main things I wanted to talk to you about, Luke, which is Facebook groups, right? AOS Facebook groups. So I think, and we started kind of with the summary. I think AOS Facebook groups are they're a good place to start. But you gotta filter some of the information, right? Like, because you're gonna get a huge spectrum of opinions, but it's a good starting point. In particular, go on.
I think with anything, when you're coming onto like something with a forum, like whatever it is, wherever it is, Twitter, Facebook, WhatsApp, TGA, ask for validation of someone's point. Like, why do they think this is good? Like, what actual proof do they have that, like, they go, oh, I don't know. Someone says to you, like, oh, I've won my last 20 games with my Slaves to Darkness. It's like, oh, that's really cool. And, like, they might be, like, onto something. They might. But ask the questions of, who do you regularly play against? Are you playing in a competitive meta, if that's the idea of what you want to be able to do? Ask the questions and get them to answer. And, like, don't be, like,
combative.
aggressive.
Yeah.
Be combative. Like, just ask them, and you might just find like, oh, okay, this guy has actually got something with Slaves to Darkness. He actually, might take them up to like a 3-2 record. But
Right.
or it might just be that like he plays his friends in a basement, and he has more model options than they do, or they don't really abide by points, or they're playing at 1,000 points where the game is vastly different than a standard 2K game, or they're playing like above points. They play at like 4K games where, once again, it's massively different from a standard 2K game you're going to play.
Right. Right. Yeah, and so like it's important to like, don't believe everything you read on the internet. It's that old lesson we were learned young. But there is some. I think everyone's journey roughly begins about the same. You have a cursory interest in IDK, or not IDK. You have a cursory interest in Age of Sigmar, whether it's through Warhammer Quest or Hero Quest. Silver Tower, Warcry.
There's card games nowadays as well.
Yeah, tons of card games. There's just a lot of avenues to get into wargaming. And then, you just see something happen, something clicks. Maybe you're at an LGS, maybe you're at something like Gen Con where there's a bunch of different games that you're exposed to, and you suddenly see, you see your first Nagash on the table. You see that model and you go, "What is this amazing thing? I want to play this." Right? And everyone has that like moment, and then from there it's kind of like information overload. You're like, okay, where do I go? And you don't have the quality control yet. That you don't have that like personal compass that helps you decide what is worthy and what is not yet. You're just taking in information at that point, and usually, you go to the internet, right? Like that's the next step. You go you might not even know which LGS in your city is the good one for Age of Sigmar, right? Like maybe your city doesn't have one, so you go to the internet. I think a lot of
you could be out in a country town or something like that where you have no idea, or you might be the only person interested in this sort of thing.
Yeah, they only play Magic at your LGS. That's all they play. MTG, 5 days a week. And twice on Saturdays, and they close on Sundays. Like you just, I just described we have 2 game stores here in my town. The one game store only plays Magic. That's all they do. I can't even buy like a White Dwarf at that store. There's nothing. It's board games. They have a good spread of board games, but it's all the like stuff you'd expect. It's all the Catan. It's all the it's all the like standard, Ticket to Ride sort of like entry level like board games, and then just like Magic the Gathering constantly. So
yeah, but
so you go to the internet, and one thing I have found is like the faction groups. I feel like I've gotten a lot more worthy information than the bigger groups on Facebook, and you run a huge a bunch of these, don't you?
Yeah, like Faction 1 specifically, I don't know if you can see all the crap that is there. That is full of Warhammer. I generally do own pretty much every army in the game, in some fashion. So a lot of the armies actually speak to me. I'm just a collector with a bad habit. That doesn't know when to stop. But yeah, I think running them a lot. I also have like a certain way I like to envision the community. Like it is for me, it's an escape from my day to day, whatever part it is. And we've had arguments with this in the groups that I run when people don't like the way that I run the groups. When I've gone, it's a group for hobby. And it is hobby only. I don't allow any outside things, whether that be political, religious, or any other thing. It is hobby. You don't need to know that. I don't need to know if the guy across from me is a right-wing Christian. He's playing Warhammer. That's all that matters to me. Or I don't need to know that he doesn't support a particular thing that I support. Who cares? He's playing Warhammer across the table from me. I'm probably never going to see this guy again. Do I need to know this? No.
Yeah, well, like and I think it's important. Um, some people use games differently, right? Um,
Yeah,
and you're gonna discover. I've discovered personally that a lot of people in Age of Sigmar in particular use it as a tap out moment. Like you're just like, okay, reality. I'm tapping out, like checking out. Like I am done with reality. I just you know like the sirens were going off constantly. I checked the news, saw this horrible thing happen downtown today. Like all this things going wrong. Political party A did something to political party B and vice versa. My sports team lost, like, and just the world, everything is bad. And Age of Sigmar is just one of those things where like I'm like, okay, like I'm tapping out. I'm going to go play Age of Sigmar, and I don't want these other things to bother me right now. Not everyone's like
yeah,
that, but I found a lot of Age of Sigmar players tend to kind of uh, use the game
yeah,
as I mean, it's an escape, right? It's escapism.
yeah. It's an escape, and like that doesn't mean that you can't come into the group with views or
And
whatever,
yeah,
whatever thing. It's just keep them to the side. Like this is just a group for hobby.
and
Um,
especially on Facebook, and I think it's really important to not bury the lead on this. This is especially important for Facebook because
yeah,
Facebook is the place where it's like the League of Legends of socialization. Like it's just it's pure, like the toxicity, especially in, like, I'd say like the last 5 years, has just been ramping up, and I think it's hit a fever pitch. I can't go onto my own Facebook feed anymore. Um, like I keep my Facebook feed. It's a private. You have to befriend me. Like I really like I follow the things I follow because I used to go there for news. But what ends up happening when you go there for news? You see the comments. You read one comment, and then you're just like, and then you switch into keyboard warrior mode. Somebody is wrong on the internet. Put a pot of coffee on. I'm gonna be up at this for a while. Like it's just like that happens, and so when you go to Facebook, I think like a lot of people in whatever Facebook group, like they see their news feed, their NPR article or whatever, uh, NPR or Fox News article or whatever they follow, and then right below that they see somebody's hobby image of like their awesome ass conversion of Bestigors, and you go immediately from angry at the comment section on the news group to now I have to say something about the Bestigor. And like if you're not in the right mindset of like sort of like getting rid of that before you go into that Bestigor, you know, post or whatever it is, you might bring in some other stuff. And so I think I see a lot of that honestly on Facebook. I think like that's half of why people are filled with such vitriol is because they keep it all. It's all in the same spot. My Twitter feed is super focused. Twitter is just D&D, video games, some comics, some music, and Age of Sigmar. That's all my Twitter feed is. And I've had to like unfollow a couple of people, and I'm like, you're awesome. I will talk to you any day of the week. But like, I go to my Twitter feed, and then I start seeing some of these things I just don't want to think about pop up in my feed, and I'm just like, and I'm
yeah,
depressed again. And I'm like, but my Facebook isn't like that. Even though I've worked really, really hard to screen it out, like I'm still gonna see the article about babies in cages and how that makes me sad, and then I go look at Age of Sigmar, and like I'm just sad because I saw the babies in cages post. So like, I think it's important to like have those filters. And you as a moderator, you've kind of put the hard line down and just like none of this crap in our groups.
yeah. It doesn't matter what side you're from, whether you are in the side that personally think is right or think is wrong. Doesn't matter what side it is, you will get banned, or not necessarily banned. You will be warned, and then you will be removed if you keep doing it. Regardless of what side you're on, I don't allow either side. I take a completely impartial view on it.
Yeah.
To just this is hobby. It doesn't matter if you're trying to, what was it like? What was the one going around? A great one that like ended up banning some guy for because he got really annoyed about it was the one with like Obama and the Zinch for Change
Mm.
one. And it's like my personal views might be one way about this, but I still don't agree with that being in a hobby group. I'm like that can go somewhere else.
Well, that's why you go to that's why you join one of the groups I helped form, which is the memes and shit posting group, where that's just a free for all.
Yeah, and go to that.
Yeah, just go there.
That.
Just, but that's in the title. You are shit posting, right? Like,
yeah, and people go there and they expect to see that sort of stuff. But it's like I try to keep the page open and easy access for everyone. So when you come in, you don't see this wall of hate and vitriol and just not good stuff. You see all this amazing hobby, and you're inspired by the page to get into the hobby and do stuff with the hobby.
Right. And Doggo is happy in background. Is that the Dalmatian?
That is the Dalmatian.
Shut up.
Hey, mailman, hey.
She's probably talking to the Rottweiler that's the yard over.
Oh, is that what it is? Sup, Rot? How's it going?
Give me 1 sec.
Yep.
I'm just gonna go shut her up.
Yeah, so I can just sort of sort of building off of what we're kind of talking about is I have a I'm pretty vocal about how much I dislike Facebook. I blame them very specifically. I blame them very specifically for Nagash getting nerfed because people's opinions are terrible, and you usually get like what's called like, it's not even a vocal minority. I think that there's like a vocal majority that can be wrong. You know, that you end up exposed to people who don't think about their opinion a whole lot. They
I know exactly what topic we're talking about.
Like they don't think about their opinion a whole lot. They become like a slave to their own echo chamber, and like they take another opinion they hear, they combine it with an emotion that they had at the time. So like you lost to Nagash on Sunday at your LGS. And then you saw someone on Facebook be like, Nagash is bullshit. And then you're like, yeah, Nagash is bullshit. And you like, and that's all you need. Now he's bullshit.
I've got a perfect analogy for this. It's what I like to call Beast Claw Raider syndrome. Of like something being really negative, like Beast Claw are in the worst spot of any army. And I've expressed this before to people. It's in a friendly environment where you're just playing with random models that you're throwing together in a hobby store. Beast Claw are the worst army to face. They do 6 mortal wounds flat out, and that seems broken. However, take that same army to a tournament, and you are severely underpowered and not ready to deal with pretty much anything at the tournament.
Well, context is like really, really important for these things, and that's what I'm talking about. Is like the power to like reinforce your own echo chamber is strong on the internet. I mean, I talked about. I literally said my Twitter is an echo chamber that I have sculpted on purpose. Like I just said those words, but I'm also one of those people who doesn't take his opinions from his echo chamber. I formulate my own opinions. The echo chamber is there for me to fucking feel good. I don't want to like take my opinions from the internet, but I'm not, you know, that goes with just the whole like notion of self-doubt or Cartesian doubt, where like I always question my, like I do like I was just talking today about how I continuously do like a like self-check, a self-diagnostics on what I believe every now and then, like okay, scanning, okay, are we good? Better do some research on these things just to make sure that I'm not taking crazy pills, right? But no, Frank said something really, really worthy earlier, and I was trying to work this in, where he said when you're kind of delving into the internets and formulating your opinions about Age of Sigmar, is you kind of want to gravitate towards some of the experts. Now, and here's the thing about Age of Sigmar. The various experts, all of us self-proclaimed exactly experts, do not agree. So it's a good starting point. Like Rufio Symes right at the top, Rob Symes right at the top of my Twitter feed here. He's a great first step for an opinion, you know, because you go, you know, what does Rob think? But he's not the only opinion. I disagree with Rob. I've disagreed with him openly, like in his own, like on Warhammer Weekly and in like conversations, like directly. But the thing is like we both respect each other. We both create content, and we both think about what we believe, right? So like if you're gonna like essentially borrow knowledge, which is all knowledge ever is borrowed. You know, you're just borrowing it from other sources. starting with like some expert opinion, because it's the closest thing we have to like we don't have like professional Age of Sigmar opinion men, like news folk. We're getting close to it, like with Patreons and such like that. But like if you follow Doom and Darkness is going to give you like a good. He's got like a opinion that comes from a place of levity, but his bias is there when he talks destruction. These are great jumping off points, and the community members you identify with, you have something in common with them a little bit more than Age of Sigmar, and I think that's why you resonate with certain community members versus some other ones. But that's a good jumping off point. Find some expert initially when you're getting into these, and when you see an expert come into Facebook, and I'm not saying that their opinion is twice as valid as yours or anybody else's, but it's a good litmus test. It's a good
I'll jump in here. No expert comes from mini wargaming. Shots fired. I don't care.
Right. Credibility is important, right? Like you're building some credibility when you're in a community, and I think that comes from accountability and visibility. If I'm fucking wrong, like I expect like myself to like discover I'm wrong and fix it and be held accountable. Just today, I kind of jumped down someone's throat on Twitter and felt like a shitbag after I kind of like read it back to myself. I'm like, oh crap, I like that wasn't right, and like immediately just like I was wrong, sorry, like that. The internet is a dangerous place because we have an abundance of information that kind of tends to saturate out and dilute the amount of facts, and so pruning through information and discovering what is worthy information, what are facts, and then tailoring it for your interactions, which is what at the end of this is interacting with people on Facebook about Age of Sigmar. If you remember first, before any interaction, that everybody you talk to in a Facebook group, you've at least got liking Age of Sigmar in common. If you just remember that simple fact, you'll go a lot further than thinking like, these are enemies who I hate, and that like they're wrong, and I have to convert them to my opinion about whether Nagash should go up another 100 points or not. Like if you go at it like, okay, this is a person who plays Age of Sigmar, and I play Age of Sigmar. What do we have in common? How can we fix this? And go on. And
just a few questions when you ask someone, like when you see something posted or you ask the question. It's going back to my point before, like just ask how they play, like, and does it match how you want to play?
Right. Right, and that's
if you go, oh, do you play competitive, for instance, and they go, oh no, I just play in my basement with a couple of mates. You go, okay, cool, I'll take your opinion on board, but it might not be the most valid opinion. You might take the guy below who says, right, I go to tournaments, I've won the last 2 tournaments I've been at, here's the results, you can go see them on the Honest Wargamer stats and stuff like that. And all of a sudden you go to that guy and like, right, this is this guy I want to listen to.
Yeah, if you're looking for
ask those couple of questions.
Yeah, for competitive especially, right?
Yeah.
And Joanna, real quick, addressing chat here. Mephisto, I am wrong about the Packers. I'm wearing a mighty fanciful dad sweater that disagrees with you and proves you're wrong. Fact.
I should have had on my American top for you guys, for everyone on tonight. I own the Seahawks top. I am a Seahawks fan.
Gross. Yeah, we can't be friends anymore. Like, we're not friends. I still haven't forgiven you for the fail Mary.
Well, funnily enough, that's how I became a Seahawks fan, because I'm just like, American football's at a really good time for me, like to watch, because it's on pretty much now in like the mornings for me, which is really cool, especially like Seattle. So that was a big reason why I like Seattle, because they're generally later in the day, so their games
yeah,
a cool time for me. But I actually got into it watching a Super Bowl. It was Patriots versus Seattle. It was Patriots versus Seattle, wasn't it? Yeah, the one where they lost. Yeah. And I'm like, right. So I'm not a bandwagoner because I like this. I started understanding the game, watching a season. I'm like, I didn't really go for anyone this season. I'm like, I'm going to go for the team that loses. I had no idea that Seattle won the year before. Or that the Patriots won a lot. But I was like, I'm going to go for the team that loses, because that way I don't seem like a bandwagoner. And it just so happens that their logo is really similar to the West Coast Eagles, who are the Australian football team that I go to.
So that's really funny. Like the finding the sort of common visuals. Because, humans are visual people. We like looks and stuff.
And that green, I love that green away kit that the Seattle Seahawks.
So you like the high visibility green that I wear when I'm working to not get hit by cars. Like you like that green.
It's just such a cool uniform. What other sport has like fluorescent green as a uniform? I like a lot of sport, and it's just one of the. It's just so out there. I love it.
Yeah. No, can't deny that it is out there. Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. So Facebook groups. Yeah. Rabbit hole complete. So Facebook groups. Again, I'm pretty vocal. About like hating the average Facebook opinion, and I just spent about 20 minutes telling you how to not be like Mephisto.
But I think that's in general what I try to create. I try to create the group. At least you're getting Facebook. Like, you're not getting outside Facebook into it. You're just getting Warhammer, and you can be angry about Warhammer. Which
there
is
you
cool
go.
Because you're still thinking about Warhammer, and you're still in that, like, you're angry, just like, oh, this person's wrong. But then you're like, oh, this person's completely wrong about this unit they says is terrible. And you're just like, I'm going to go find a way to make that unit good.
Me arguing about Black Knights. No, like I actually like one of the things the GA Death. I don't know if that's a Cinderfall Gaming one or not.
No, that's run by Clint, actually. Herald of War does that sort of stuff.
Oh, well, that one, that's a Clint. Oh, yeah.
I'm pretty sure Clint, James from Mortally Wounded, and yeah, a bunch of those guys. I know the guys, a bunch of Australians, as always, do all the Age of Sigmar stuff.
Why is that? Why is that?
We have like this town of Toowoomba, which is like some secondary town in Queensland near the border of New South Wales, and that has like 3 or 4 podcasts from it.
I actually like that. That's a wonderful question. Why do you want to control this chaos that is Facebook? Every time there's a new, like, you can't help yourself. Every time there's a teaser of a new faction, that fucking Cinderfall Gaming group goes up. The invites go out. Like, what? Why do you? Where does that come from?
I like creating the hype. I like to see the hobby in a good place. I generally do want to get most of these armies. In fact, I do. Like I said, I do own most of them. I'll probably get Ossiarch Bone Reapers. They look cool. But it's to create hype, keep it in a positive space. It's just a new thing to get talking about and to keep the community talking about something Warhammer rather than all the bad crap in the world. Yeah,
so more of this, like, just sort of like helping build little like social chambers of escapism. So you also have like a cast of moderators and stuff like that you sort of like bring on board.
Especially for a lot of the more faction specific ones, the ones like I know I'm going to play off and on. I get in other people that I know are like really going to delve into the army or already play the army and are quite good experts in it. So I've got moderators on there that people can look to for really good advice. Or what I hopefully think will be good advice when the army actually comes out.
Oh yeah, see, I'm on the Ossiarch. I'm somehow an admin on the Ossiarch Bone Reapers. I was mid shit talking post when I saw that I became an admin, and I had to immediately delete the shit talk I was about to lay down on some guy on the internet.
But with the reason for like picking you, I know you're all about death. You're gonna make this army, and you're gonna like point people in the right direction for it.
Well, like today,
calling a spade in the army as well. I expect the moderators to go, no, that unit is bad.
Well, and that's the thing is like I think one of my greatest issues with Facebook, Age of Sigmar, and TGA in particular, so like those big internet communities, has been like this forced positivity. That's why I have to put an asterisk in front of my Ossiarch Bone Reapers hype right now. It is unabashed. I feel no shame with how excited I am for this army. But I know the rules brain will kick in once I'm reading that book. I'm still going to play the army because I'm so in love with the aesthetic. and there's more to the game than just rules. But like, if it comes out and like, ultimate shame, the Kavalos Death Riders are worse than Black Knights, I'm going to weep tears. Visibly,
Well,
like, I'm just gonna pull up the stream. I'm gonna switch to rant cam and just cry for 30 minutes reading the War Scroll, like, but because like I don't think you're helping anyone by like lying to them about stuff in Age of Sigmar.
No, I think Joe or Halo does it really good with like Beastclaw, and like shows that like yes, you can love an underpowered faction really well like Beastclaw, but he tries to tell you all these tactics and stuff, but he makes you understand that no, the army is quite underpowered and does take some work.
Yeah, and he's stuck with it.
Honest.
Yeah, and I think that honesty is refreshing too. When you have somebody, there is the person who's like Slaanesh isn't overpowered, like it's underpowered right now, where like it's disingenuous. Like there is that disingenuous my army is underpowered, thing, and that can be sour, but it all comes from, how do they back it up, right? How do you back up what you're saying? That's what makes some opinions more valid than others. Is, I don't have a very good opinion on semi trucks. I could tell you that Peterbilts are the best truck in the world because I know the word Peterbilt and I think it's pretty sweet. But then somebody's like, actually, Mack trucks are the best because it's got a doohickey in it that spins at a certain velocity in a certain direction, and its engine does the thing. And they're like, I've worked on semi-trucks for 20 years, and my dad before me was a semi-truck person. And I'm just like, well, one of us has a more worthy opinion, or I need to go find the guy who's worked on trucks for 40 years and whose grandfather and great-grandfather worked on trucks to tell me that I'm actually right. But that's how this works. Some opinions aren't as worthy. You can be right and have an unworthy opinion, right? That's fucking crazy down to people. Telling someone like, you're right, but how you got there is wrong. I know that's a little bit too advanced for fucking Rantcast, but my father was a semi-truck. Ultimate knowledge achieved, Nosh. I am a semi-truck, therefore I know which semi-truck is best truck.
I'll talk to Joanna here. Slaanesh were not underpowered before their book. They were good before their book. If you look at their stats before the book as well, they were already on like a 60-something% win rate before the book came out.
People weren't playing them because they still had a bunch of outdated metal kits. They were hard to get, but like Zinch Mike.
I played them in a competitive scene. They were my first ever army to face at a GT. I played the Overlord of Measured Gaming. Shout out to the Measured Gaming guys. If you want something as good as Rantcast and the same sort of feel, Joel
will actually be on Rantcast next week. So Joel's coming on.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Joel is a top bloke. He was my introduction to the competitive scene, and that is a hard introduction into the competitive scene. But yeah, Slaanesh were good before the book.
And that's why it wasn't, my hot take at the time. I think I was on Haywo's show and I'm like, Slaanesh is the next Daughters of Cain. And I said it because I looked at them and I'm like, they're already performing well. And Sylvaneth hadn't happened yet, right? I hadn't seen a new book come out and make something actually, quote unquote, worse. And I still think there's competitive builds in that Sylvaneth tome. So I'm not saying Sylvaneth is bad, but by certain metrics, it got worse, right?
You love the new battalions?
Yeah. But the point is like Slaanesh, I looked at Slaanesh and I'm just like, Slaanesh already has all the tools to compete, people just aren't playing it. The instant they release like some new kits and make this army easier to purchase, we're just going to see it skyrocket to the top of competitive performance. And that's precisely what happened. And like now it's like, now I'm just laughing. The Silesk battalion came out today. I am cackling. I think it's hilarious. Like I'm not even mad that Slaanesh is great. I just find it funny when people say like, "Oh no, it's it's fine." Like I'm just enjoying the ride, honestly. DOK eventually, DOK is still one of the best armies in the game, but like there's so many great armies in the game that it's diluted it a little bit, and they got just a couple of like things whacked back into place a little bit. Hopefully, Games Workshop has as measured a hand with adjusting Slaanesh in the future, and like bringing them into power, and that they don't get like Nagash'd or KO'd. Like they don't. Well, KO's fine now, but there was a year after Clown Car, they were just being punished for their transgressions. So hopefully they don't just smash it into the ground and like obliterate.
See, I've never known KO to end because I play probably one of the best KO players in the world on a regular basis.
Dan Brewer, right? Like
no, I played the Kron, Mr. Cancron himself.
Yeah.
He's one of my regular gaming buddies, and I constantly get my poo pushed in by KO.
Yeah, and you might not. Yeah, I mean KO or BCR might be the better, because BCR really got kind of like it wasn't even like Beast of Chaos, or I'm sorry, Beast Claw Raiders were like the main like transgressors. It was Mixed Destruction using some of their stuff, and the adjustments made to them plus the meta and just like everything rocked them to the bottom. I'm hoping Slaanesh doesn't get that, because I do think you don't ever want something people genuinely love as an army to get like taken down into like shelf territory. I think that's a failure. That's almost a worse failure than making something overpowered. Overpowered, the meta can adjust. Other overpowered stuff exists. You can find it. You can you can do some counterplay. There's answers to overpowered stuff. Underpowered stuff, the fully shelf tier stuff is a tragedy, because you stop seeing it get played. And I think
that's sort of a good point on like Age of Sigmar, how they're continuously updating the meta with like the 6 monthly FAQs and like the general handbook. We do see units actually getting rotated, so you might not use that unit for a year or 6 months, then it'll come back out.
Yeah,
maybe.
Yeah,
unless they do a Charybdis.
Right. You might.
It goes away for good.
Then it's just gone forever. Another 4 years, reset the clock. We'll wait on this one. Yeah, there's I'm not. I guess what I'm saying is I'm not running for the hills because of Slaanesh, and that's another thing. Like, I haven't even checked what Facebook's saying right now about the Celeste Battalion. I'm sure it's not good. I bet you. Are you just constantly banning people right now in the Cinderfall gaming group?
Everyone not banning, but like, I always remove like posts that are just someone complaining about something being broken without any actual context. It's like, if you can put up it's not enforced positivity. That's not what I'm trying to get at in the groups. It's, if you're going to be negative, bring a purpose to it. No one needs to see you spouting out such and such is broken and that's your post.
Yeah.
Like, go, I think, or put some thought into it.
So just put some thought into it.
I think this is bad. This is why I think this is bad. And then you're actually creating conversation. You're creating argument.
What a good take. So I got you probably for about another half hour or so, right?
Probably about an hour. Probably an hour.
Okay. Well, we can always revisit some of these other subjects, but I want to talk about this sooner rather than later, and we can always talk about some other stuff going forward. One of the gaming groups you actually started, and this is I shit all over Facebook groups constantly because it's almost a meme for me, and you're a good sport, obviously, about it. And it needs to be known that it's all in good spirit. When I'm making fun of like a Facebook group, I'm making fun of this this big ambiguous amoeba of like a concept of a Facebook group, not any specific groups. Not, in fact, I'm just lumping internet conversation and the internet like just unreasonableness into saying Facebook groups. It could be WhatsApp, it could be TGA, it could be whatever. I've just chosen Facebook as my particular scapegoat. So I want to say, before you go into my comments on this video or this podcast down the line and just start adding me over Facebook, like that's not the take here. I just think there are some cautionary tales and lessons in there that you can learn from my hyperbole, right? I mean, fuck that. I'm not apologizing for shit. This is Rantcast. No. No, one of the groups you did recently make, though, was this Dadhammer, what is it? Dadhammer Support Network?
Yeah.
And this is actually really awesome. So, I mean, there's a you if you followed me for any degree of time, like whether it's on Twitter or Twitch or YouTube, like you know that I think I'm pretty open about like mental health. It's something that's pretty important to me. I've struggled with my mental health basically my whole life, and only within this last year. Thank you so much for that Twitch Prime sub there, Soren. The resub, thank you so much. It's only within this last year that I decided to take the mental health visibility stance that I've taken, which is, just, hey, if I'm having a bad day, like, I'm having a bad day. I used to think, and I grew up thinking, that if you said you were having a bad day, you were being a pansy, or you were throwing a pity party, and you were, oh, woe is me, or poor me. My grandma's token line would just be, life's a bitch, and then it has puppies, and she'd just say that to me, and I'd have to, sorry, grandma, that, your daughter kicked the literal crap out of me, and, I have issues because of it. It took one person that I admire on Twitter being visible with their mental health, and then suddenly going, oh wow, it's not just me. And when that one person did that, it changed the course of this last year. It was like that, and honestly, a lot of Luke, you, AOS Coach, Doom, plus personal friends in my circle, actually reached out to me and were hey, we got you type thing. And from there, it was just Bryce was a big part of it too. From there, it was I'm okay being not okay, and that was a world of difference to me. And nothing makes you feel not okay faster than being a parent. And I do think that people in Age of Sigmar, there is that we talked for a long time this podcast about having Facebook groups be an escape from the Age of Sigmar Facebook groups being an escape from reading the comments on a news article, right? You don't want that effect with your Facebook group. You don't want that type of vitriol, and essentially creating this network to sort of help. Most of what I see is just pure camaraderie and support, because again, nothing makes you feel not okay faster than I yelled at my daughter the other day. I'm she's 3, she has no idea, and here I am, this just monster of a human, just yelling at her because I can't handle my emotions. The adult I'm supposed to be sometimes. And so you've created this Cinderfall, this Dad Hammer support network, and I've seen a lot of good positivity in there. That's kind of pushing back against this. You can't be open about some of your struggles, and you can't, especially as a man, this toxic masculinity thing where you got to be a man and you got to man up and you got to sack up and carry on, right? But to actually see folks talking about some of their especially again, parenting, it's rough, it's hard, especially when you when you have some other outliers going on in your life. And so you've created that group, and I think that's been pretty awesome. You want to talk a little bit about how that came to be, and maybe maybe some goals for it?
Yeah. So I'm a new dad myself. I've only just had my second child. He's 3 weeks as of yesterday. Or actually, he'd be 3 weeks as of today for those living in America. Future. And so I created it just probably around this time last year. I think I created it, maybe a little bit after. And the idea behind it was, being a dad's a hard life. It's not easy. Yes, you cop the be a man and toughen up, or you sometimes you just have to smile and do what you need to do for your family. It can be a hard life.
Yeah.
And the idea behind this was, a lot of gamers, I think, can be a bit reclusive. It is we're nerds, or some of us are quite nerdy, and we use it as a way to escape, and like it is this community we're a part of. And for some of us, it's the only friends we have, members of this community.
Well, I think you see two major categories of wargamer. You see the veteran, who's probably got some form of PTSD, or not all of them do. Obviously, that could be a harmful stereotype to say everyone who's ever been a soldier has PTSD. But you do have that category of veteran that has some PTSD or potential PTSD, and then you have nerds or like people of an outcast status, right?
Yeah, who have like social interaction
anxiety,
problems,
social anxiety, social whatever it is. And again, like not to stereotype, but you do have these two groups, and they make up a good percentage of the AOS player base. And it's hard being a parent. It really is hard. And one of my struggles, I live kind of removed from my main circle of friends now. All my college friends scattered to the winds and went out, all the different major cities across the continental U.S. And I was living in Milwaukee, the city I absolutely love. My homerism for Milwaukee, let it be stated, I love that city. I love its sports teams, like everything about Milwaukee except for the gentrification. I love Milwaukee. But I moved away from Milwaukee, and I felt like I lost a bit of my identity in doing so. And so Molly, Lulu, my partner, her and I, it's her and me against the world right now. But what ends up happening is if I have an issue, she basically has the same issue. And so now I'm like, I'm stressing, like, I feel like I'm being a bad, Molly, I feel like I'm being a bad parent. Oh no, Andrew, you're not being a bad parent. I'm like, well, of course you have to say that, and so it's nice to have another voice that comes from outside, or several voices that can support you or back you up.
Yeah, and that's the idea behind the group. It's like these people that are coming here are similar to you. Like, how similar? It might just be as similar as they play the same war game and they understand like the frustration of like you don't get as much Warhammer time as you used to, or it might be that they have certain issues they're dealing with. Like it could be something like what was the one I put up the other day, dealing with like just having a chat to like newer dads about dealing with the potential issues of a partner, or even yourself having postnatal depression.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, like
you find things like that.
Yeah, there was I don't know if it was a conversation there or if it spawned off of that group, but I recall someone talking about like, what do they do when their wife is like having the postpartum or postnatal, whatever the nomenclature is used, the common parlance. And one of the things, and I didn't respond to it because it seemed pretty well, everyone was kind of chatting pretty decently. But I remember one of the things that Molly's OB, she was fantastic. One of the things she said to me, she like took me aside and she's like, Andrew, if she's got this, and you're gonna notice the signs and stuff like that, and it's not uncommon. One of the best things you can say to her is just like, how can I help you right now? Don't make it like, oh, you're going through the problem, or you have a problem, or you're depressed, and just be like, hey, what can I do right now? It's sometimes just doing the dishes, right? Like, do the dishes.
Yes.
It can be simple stuff, and I like what you touched on a little bit more. You touched on a little bit earlier before we got. I kind of took it in the heavy direction twice now, but sometimes it's just like how I don't game as much as I want, as I would like to, because I got kids. What do? And there's a lot of the lighthearted stuff too in that group too. It's not all just like
you see
heavy.
People posting pictures with their kids painting some models as well and that sort of stuff.
Yeah, like it's one of the. I mean, that's the other thing is like there's a faux pas about even in gamer groups of like posting your children gaming. Like you're like the whole like don't post pictures of your food, don't post, pictures of your kids, and like people just get like mad about this. It's like this new millennial rage I'm seeing on the internet. Where like, I'm like, God damn it, I'm gonna post a photo of my daughter sitting here with with my mini travel mouse from when I still used to do some mobile IT and stuff, and like my spare headphone set with a keyboard and like some Warhammer minis. Like I want to I want to post that, and like who better to share that with than like another group of like, gaming parents who are just trying to like, like kind of like hide their, not hide their, but they're sort of forced to I guess by society, this sort of, again, notion of what it is to be a man and yada yada yada, and like, no, you can actually openly love your kids and just like show them to other dads and stuff, because we do have this, I think we got this new generation of gaming dad. I used to write about this on when I still wrote for Kotaku, is I think we got this new generation of gaming dad that's emerging, where we kind of gamed despite our parents, right? It might be different for you, but most of my peers growing up, their parents were not gamers. Their parents were normal people, like,
yeah. And then you get cool stuff with like people post, and you got this more modern sort of thing where you've got people like that their kids want to do it, or they want their kids to do it with them.
Yeah, there's a lot of that.
An example would be my co-host that does the narrative show with me over on Cinderfoot Gaming. He actually took his daughter to CanCon with him, and they just went to Sydney GT together as well this past weekend. And she goes around to tournaments all across the country with him.
So that's awesome. Yeah, like I've actually got my money on Lily being the one more likely to be a gigantic nerd. Like Colin, he plays video games and stuff, but Lily's the one who broke my Nagash. Like she's the one who broke Nagash.
Intrigued by the model and then accidentally broke it.
Did you hear? Have you heard this story? Maybe Chad hasn't heard this story. So I got back from that was Midwest Meltdown? No, it was NashCon. I got back from NashCon. And, I came in the house and I did what you do when you get home from a long trip, is you kind of put your stuff down. And when you travel with Warhammer, you travel with a lot of extra shit. So I put my Nagash on the table. And then I brought I brought my bags upstairs and stuff. And then I'm used to just like leaving Nagash about and having some hobby supplies out. The only thing I'm really particular about is my X-Acto knife and my clippers. They're always out of reach because she's 3. She doesn't know. And like,
I will be back in 1 sec.
I'll finish my tale. Yeah. And so like I put Nagash on the table, and kind of came upstairs and I started putting laundry away and stuff like that. And Molly comes into the room. And she's like, Andrew, come downstairs. And she brings me downstairs. And she's like, Andrew, sit down. And then she like grabs Nagash, and he's in 2 pieces, and his like little, he's off his base, and he's kind of broken into 2 pieces. And she's like, Lily broke it. She feels really bad. And Lily, my daughter, had run, and she is currently in the recliner, just like covering her face and stuff. And so I walk around the corner, and like I wasn't angry. I mean, I do, I've got Irish temper a little bit, like I've got, some of the cliche things that you wouldn't expect. I do a passionate rant style podcast because I'm a passionate guy. So a lot of my stuff boils pretty close to the surface. Depression or anger or happiness, all of those things just stay on the surface for me. And so I walk in there, and like I wasn't angry. I was actually like touched, because I had realized like I had been gone all weekend playing this Age of Sigmar game, that she just sees me playing with models all the time, and then she hears I leave to go play Age of Sigmar. And like, and her kids they're a lot brighter than we give them credit for. She's just like, Dad goes and he plays this, and I want to play this and be like Dad. And in that moment, I was touched and not upset that Nagash was broken in 2 pieces. But then I also had this like visual metaphor that Nagash was broken in 2 pieces, and it was time to put him away on the shelf and play something else now for a little while. But update to that story. Lily's got her first Necromancer. Over here, I've got an extra Necromancer kit to put together for her, and Nagash, I finally glued him back together. So he's standing aloft on the shelf, right next to my Doom Demon. So Nagash is back together again, and I actually felt like like this metaphor. Like I felt like as I was repairing Nagash, I was repairing my mental health state for like the last month. Like I'm like, as the glue comes together and Nagash is whole again, so am I. It was really corny and super nerdy, but it was this like weird touching moment of like, I remember, like thinking I would just be angry if my kids broke my controllers and stuff, because I'm really particular about like electronics too. I'm that guy when it comes to electronics. And Colin, the first thing he did when he was a baby is he crawled over to my SNES system and he just pulled it off the shelf. I'm like, okay, Dad, time to like move the retro consoles to the higher shelves and stuff. And so I think there's stuff like that like as a first time dad maybe doesn't occur to you, like hobbying around children, right? Like hobbying around children and actually having somewhat of that caregiver mind, because we were raised by I think for the most part a lot of us were raised by a generation that had a different take on what fatherhood meant and a different take on what it meant to be a nerd. Go play sports so I can vicariously play them through you was a little bit more of our generation than hey, come build a necromancer with Dad. Right.
Yeah.
And just letting people know that like there's more folks out there. Your dad was a nerd. Yeah, my uncle was a Trekkie. And so I did have I did have a nerd in my peripheral growing up. Like so like that was there. Like I had those influences, but like none of my peers were raised by like nerd dads. The closest it got was my friend Sam's dad was like a really awesome like classic metalhead who listened to like awesome ass music like Captain Beyond and like Deep Purple and stuff. And so like he would be blasting that stuff when we go over to his house, and then he'd switch into I'm an economics professor mode, and you're like, you're a fucking nerd, I know it. But he played soccer. So yeah, so what's a goal moving forward for the Dad Hammer support group?
Really, it's just to have a safe space to chat about like all the stuff that like you might otherwise be persecuted for. Talking about like mental health, do you have a problem, or like even just like there's people posting on there like asking for like, oh, what nappy brands do you recommend? That generic stuff.
Yeah,
or like, there was another one of like talking about getting non-scented non-scented bathing sort of stuff and soaps because it doesn't leave a scent that the baby can smell and stuff like that.
So that's interesting. That's really cool. That's really cool. I'd be interested to see someone pick up the charge of making like a Mom Hammer support network too for women in the hobby. That'd be really neat.
I'm not touching the Mom Hammer stuff.
No, I don't think you should. You can't. Don't appropriate the Mom Hammer. Yeah, don't appropriate the moms. Let a mom take up that charge. So if you're a hobby mom hanging out here, maybe you can make a parent hammer. There you go.
I think the importance of making like men and women are different. And our problems and how we see the problems in like both relationships, raising children, and the world are quite different.
I think there's there's certainly some cultural differences that there's a period of adjustment going on.
Yeah.
I believe right now my amateur sociologist perspective, but yeah, like I mean, especially in the form of like you're not, again, as a dad, you got to be the man, you got to be the breadwinner. We still have people who believe that crap, and
it still exists. And like, there's been people who post like that sort of stuff in the group. They feel like by their mother-in-law or even their own parents that this is what they have to do.
Yeah, and so to be able to like have something to kind of diffuse some of that, that sort of toxic maleness, I think is pretty important, and it's gonna mean a lot more coming from other men dealing with it. If you're a man who was raised in that sort of culture, than coming from like somebody else, because then you think you're getting lectured or whatever. But when you see the struggle in real time, and that sort of like, yeah, That's literally the opposite of your home. Well, you're a Zoomer though. You skew a little younger, right? And I again, I think it's a transitional period right now for culture, and we're seeing that. But it's stuff like this that helps that transition of like mental health awareness and being a nerd parent and stuff. I think that stuff all really helps.
And speaking of mental health awareness, I'll talk about that. On the Dad Hammer Support Network, I'll be running Movember. For those who don't know what Movember is, it's literally growing a mustache in the month of November and trying to raise some money to help support both men's mental health issues and cancer research. It's, I don't know the actual stats in my head, but men's mental health is quite serious, and a lot of men generally do take their own life, or try to, as a result of things of like mental health building up, and as we've mentioned before, the old stigma of be a man, toughen up.
Right.
And it can be quite damaging to like a lot of people, and a lot of men just end up taking their own life. So it's really important to get like the help out there and get the research done, so that men with mental health can get not only the support they need, but people understand it better.
Right. And so what's the Dad Hammer? What's the so you're going to be supporting Movember? I think you had a way you.
Yeah. So there's obviously the Movember page. You can go donate during the month of November. I know there'll be plenty of other people like around, and plenty of things do it. Now, what I'll be doing is I'll be doing a sort of paint sponsor and paint. So I'll be trying to paint up a certain amount of models, and you can claim to sponsor me painting these models up for Movember by donating however much you want per model I paint over the month.
Okay, and
so whether it's $1 or
so kind of like a marathon running, like where you might sponsor someone to run so many miles, you're gonna seek like sponsorship for hobby. Are other people going to be partaking in this within the Dad Hammer network? Like, can I?
Yeah. Yep. Anyone. I'll make up when the Movember thing goes in. They generally send. I've done stuff before with them. So when the thing goes out, I'll post up and I'll probably post up in the main Facebook group saying you can come support this. And yeah, you can just make one-off donations, or you can call or follow the progress. Or do some hobby streams or whatever. So like follow along.
So that's really.
I'll try and paint models with mustaches. I'll get out the free guild and I'll paint out mustaches for everyone.
And for those of you watching the podcast, or any of you that frequent Twitch, I will stop shaving, but it has nothing. Movember is a convenient excuse for me because Molly hates my facial hair. Except for this part. This is grandfathered in. Like, she hates when I grow out facial hair, but I will stop shaving. I'll get really disheveled. But I mostly do that out of laziness and the season. So,
I have to grow the full beard as part of the deal with the wife, because her birthday's in the middle of November. So I have to grow the full beard until her birthday, and we get a nice picture, but then I'll shave it off, and I'll have just the mustache for the end of November as well.
Fair enough. All right, shave every day like you. Right on. So I think I get a pretty good scruff going. I'm not like what is it, Stephen Amell, the Arrow. That guy is a sexy beast with some stubble. I can't pull off the look. I wish though, one day. So I think that's really cool. And that actually I was actually listening to Playin' and Slayin', my friend of the show, Ty, does it with a couple of his friends, Josh, Troy, sometimes Bryce. They actually basically did their mental health. It was Mental Health Awareness Day a few days ago is when they recorded it. So they did their mental health awareness episode, which is what was which came out. I think it came out yesterday. I was listening to it today. They were actually they brought up this concept of essentially gaming for good. I know that like Nikki Sullivan. I follow her on Twitter. She does some Twitch stuff too. She's doing Child's Play right now, where she does some painting for Child's Play and takes some donations that way. And so Go
On
ahead.
that note of good things to support, CanCon has an army fundraiser for PCA in Australia, and there's another one, cancer research as well.
Cancer research.
You can go buy a ticket to the CanCon Army raffle, which is a fully painted noble army by some commissioned painters in Australia. You can buy a ticket, as many tickets as you want, and enter as many times as you want into the raffle to potentially win this awesome army.
When does that
happen? And it all goes to a good cause. You can find it on Heralds of War. I believe it'll get given away at CanCon, so you can go find it on just go follow Heralds of War on Facebook or Twitter, and you'll find the links you need.
Right on. Yeah, no, I think there's a lot of like sort of gaming for good to be had. I know, and mental health and stuff like that. It's kind of like become a cause I've really championed, and so I think it's any way you can. You're gonna be like doing stuff with Age of Sigmar anyway, and to sort of take that and just like turn it up a little bit, like one notch, and give something back, because quite honestly, Age of Sigmar has just done a lot. It wasn't just like the game of Age of Sigmar, but the community for Age of Sigmar has done a whole lot for my personal well-being and mental health, and just it's helped me through a lot, and to be able to take this and give back to the community in some manner, making content or doing some charity work and stuff. I think that's just great. And if you've got a cause that's near and dear to your heart, and you can find a way to roll that into what you do, like hell yeah, keep doing it. And so I think that the Dadhammer support group is it's my favorite Facebook group of the AOS groups personally. My second favorite is the Ossiarch Bone Reapers one, but that's just because I'm an admin and I'm slowly corrupting all of your followers to my calling.
Oh dear.
So any tangent we left unexplored that you want to circle back to real quick?
We sort of talked about D&D a little bit, so I guess now's as good a time to talk about the Age of Sigmar roleplay game that's coming up from Cubicle 7.
Yeah, so we did mention how the AOS Cities of Sigmar book was like super important for world building. But what we didn't mention was this. Yeah, go on.
So obviously the announced date for it is late first quarter next year. Will be when it's released, hopefully. We don't know too much except the archetypes that are out at the moment. That'll be a D6 system, so it's easy to go from AOS to this RPG system, and that is the intent, we've been told, to make it quite easy to play Age of Sigmar and go into this roleplay game. But I'll be doing a stream or podcast or however we figure out is best, and you'll be on it.
Apparently, yeah. So I've been recruited to be on it. I'm gonna do what every DM, like forever DM, does when they're allowed to let their hair down and be a player. I am going to run amok with some quirky, over-the-top character. I've got some concepts that are going through my mind, but I've got one, and I think it'll be better as a surprise for you.
Sounds like it. I don't know whether to be happy or worried about this.
Yeah. So that we don't know when that's really going to release though. But Cubicle 7's been trying real hard to get it out.
Yeah. So yeah, just a quick shout out to that, and that'll be happening. So you can keep an eye out for that.
Right. I'm just gonna play I'm gonna play a character who is like Catacrosis like main fan club member, and they're going around like trying to create like a Catacross fan club and like recruit people. Like, have you paid your taxes lately? I could play it. I'm gonna play the Samurai Man. I'm gonna play the Samurai Man before he became a construct, like one of the personalities that is one of the 18 personalities in the Samurai Man. Oh, this is gonna be so much fun.
Yeah.
But you mentioned something about how they're using a D6 system and they're to make it more translatable, and I think this is. I talked about this a little bit with Ty, how the jump off point from D&D or traditional like gaming or tabletop role playing games, pen and paper role playing games, the jump off from those into Age of Sigmar seems pretty easy. Jumping from Age of Sigmar into tabletop RPGs seems like the harder leap.
Yeah, and I think this does like a great way, and like it's probably intentional by Cubicle 7 because then you might get into the other ones because I do all the GW IP stuff now. They've just got the rights to Wrath and Glory, which is the 40k one. And they're also the guys who did the One Ring, which if you haven't played the One Ring role-playing game, that is quite a solid RPG system. I actually really enjoy it myself.
Cool. Yeah.
So yeah.
Being able to take something familiar being able to take something familiar to like a war gamer, and I think the interest to get into tabletop RPGs is the highest it's ever been. I blame directly Stranger Things and Critical Role, but having sort of like a Rosetta Stone to translate Warhammer to like RPGs, and I think that I'm curious to see this game. I'm like a connoisseur of tabletop RPGs. I often use D&D as shorthand just because it is ubiquitous and recognizable. When I say D&D, it's a lot easier than tabletop RPG, for instance. And if I say just RPG, sometimes you might think I'm talking about video games, right? You might think I'm talking about Final Fantasy and stuff. So I just use D&D as like a catch-all term. But like RPGs are just such a fantastic format, you know. The collaborative storytelling experience that is a tabletop RPG is very difficult to replicate in any other medium. You know, I obviously skew competitive as a player in Age of Sigmar, but I've got my narrative for my army in mind when I'm building it. You know, I didn't run Grimghast Reapers in my version of Legion of Nagash when Legion of Nagash was, you know, S tier, because the Spooky Boys didn't fit my aesthetic or my narrative. You know, nothing against Night Hunt or Night Hunt players. I think they're great, and I think they're bringing some low key heat right now. If people just take the plunge, buy 120 ghosts. But yeah, tabletop RPGs are just this different thing, and I don't know what it is that makes it hard to get into a role playing game. But as a GM, I know one of the big questions I've always gotten is like, well, what can I do? And then you're just like, anything. You know, like, it's just a matter of like facilitating it. I wonder how much board game we're going to see in the Cubicle 7 game, and how much role play we're going to see.
Yeah.
But you've played some of the other Cubicle 7 games, so you...
Yeah, there are a fantasy edition that they also do the Warhammer Fantasy one. Because that, despite being Warhammer, is actually like quite well liked amongst people who have no idea what Warhammer is. It's quite a popular RPG system. At least the first two were Fantasy Flight games, and that was their generic buy cards and out for everything. Which made it a really good game to play at home with your friends, but a really hard one to try and set up at a club because you needed all these cards and everything.
Mm.
But the fourth edition that Cubicle 7 was released is really good, harks back to those early editions of Warhammer Fantasy roleplay, and is a really solid system.
Okay, cool. So you've got a lot of hope for the Age of Sigmar RPG, is what you're saying?
Yeah, I think it's in good hands. Their track record is good.
Good, cool. Then I'm excited for it. I have been excited for it. I've played a spectrum of RPGs. I mean, I've played everything from like GURPS and Bessem. I even played the Elric like RPG a while back. I've played Rifts and Palladium. I always champion Palladium books. They're out of Detroit. They're fantastic settings. Their rules suck, so you need a good GM. But the games are so great. The settings are so great, and like the weird and bad rules kind of enhance it, because it encourages you to homebrew and problem solve a lot with your rules. But it also is a very theater of the mind's eye game, because the rules are so wonky that you're just, you know, the dice are... I want to roll dice in an RPG. That makes me weird, I know, to some respects. Like, I hate the, like, oh, it's just freeform RPG. I'm like, I was in drama. If I wanted to be in putting on a play right now, I would put on a play. I still like to game in an RPG, if that makes sense. but like
Yeah.
I love the theater of mind's eye style. I like having structure so that you can freestyle around that structure, you know? Like a stripper pole. It's a lot more fun to dance when you've got a stripper pole than just like on a cardboard box.
That is a great analogy.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome, everybody.
Yeah, that's all I really wanted to talk about with that. Like, we don't know an awful lot about it yet.
Right. And I think that the city's book existing is kind of important for giving more people more information to go from Age of Sigmar, the war game, to Age of Sigmar, the RPG. That's an important, necessary step, which is why when I kept talking about how I think the Cities of Sigmar is such an important book, that's part of it was that is Age of Sigmar. Games Workshop has just been crushing it in terms of avenues of play to get into, traditional 2K games. Crushing it with Warcry, Shadespire, the card game I forget the name of, so you know how much I played it.
Yeah. Warhammer Underworlds would be what you're talking about, and Warhammer Age of Sigmar Champion is the actual card game.
my mistake. No, it's not bad. It's got a cool mechanic. I like how you kind of have like you're sort of rotating almost, through the play. I kind of like that. It's an interesting mechanic. But I played Haywo, and he has pro points for Magic the Gathering, and I did not have a good time. Also, the death starter deck was shite, and that goes a long way to me not liking it. Shite. It's like shy-ish except shit. It was not good, and you will. The fastest way to like lose my loyalty is make death suck in the game. Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to being on the stream. Is it? I don't know if you can answer this, but are you planning like a long-term campaign or just like a quick season of like 6 quote-unquote episodes, like one adventure arc, or, something?
I think we're looking at about maybe 10 episodes probably for the first season. Like it'll be a test of water. If there's the want for it, we'll keep doing more. But I've talked about it more and more people seem to be really wanting it.
Yeah, and so like if you got to do
it'll never be any critical role sort of thing. But if we can make this series where people can follow along characters that they like, it'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, and like having a rotating cast, and like maybe someone's like character finishes your main story arc and then they become an NPC quest giver later on, and like have cool little. I do stuff like that in my tabletop RPGs in general. Like there are recurring characters between my campaigns and stuff, and so I think that's just fun to do. Yeah.
So it should have more information on that later.
Perfect. So we're coming right up on the 2-hour mark.
Yeah, I've probably got maybe 20 minutes, half hour
left. And any last tangents? I'm gonna hand you a soapbox. Is there something you want to stand atop the soapbox and shout out to the world? Is there anything that's been like you've been super passionate about in Age of Sigmar, or just had to get off your chest?
I think we've already gone down that. Cities of Sigmar.
Yeah, it's Cities of Sigmar.
That's my thing at the moment. I have started like a purpose-made podcast for Cities of Sigmar to show my love for them.
So you're you're in the opposite camp of Bryce and Christian F. Ware, who's in the audience right now, who just shat all over. No, I'm kidding. He didn't shit on the book. It was a good cast. I loved it. But you're very much about the Cities of Sigmar book. You're having.
Yeah, these are my armies. I am an Order player through and through. Order is my number one love. So Cities pretty much lets me to take anything Order I want, except Seraphon, and I don't care because I don't like Seraphon anyway. One of the few armies I don't own.
Christian in chat here. He says, "You think Dark Riders are good?"
Well, Dark Riders were in the list that beat him. So.
Shots fired. Oh man, I love that.
I mean, it was a mock-up game. He talked about the game on your one.
Yeah. He talked about the he.
I'll put it this way. I don't think Dark Riders are good. They just have a 14-inch movement. I think that is good.
Speed kills, man. Speed kills in this game. It's where like Black Knights, their War Scroll could practically be blank, and they have a 12-inch movement in an army that has 4-inch movement. Yeah, Black Knights are good.
Dark Riders also look sweet as hell, so that's the other reason.
Yeah, so you just convert them into your Wild Riders, and like there you go.
But I've got 25 of those.
Well, yeah, so then you just take 25 of those and 25 of the Dark Riders, and you make an Omni Rider. You just smash them, just 50-50, smash them together. See what turns out.
Yeah, we shall see what comes of it.
Right on. All right, so shamelessly self-promote everything you want to do. Who do you want to put on, like, what do you want to shout out to?
Well, I'll do myself first. Get that out of the way. Shameless self-promotion. Cinephiles Gaming, YouTube. Where currently...
Cinderfall Gaming on YouTube is what you said?
Yep.
Cinderfall Gaming on YouTube.
We're currently doing a Christmas giveaway because my partner loves Christmas. So for every 100 subscribers we pass, we'll add a Christmas present to the Christmas tree and give it away on Christmas Day.
Wow, look at that. That's already way better than anything I'm doing on my channel. The thing I'm doing on my channel is Doom is giving away something on his channel.
So you're not going to know what we're giving away.
Okay.
There'll be wrapped as presents, and they'll be going up stream that'll be over in the corner probably in the next few days.
Are you gonna do like are you gonna open the present on the stream and then mail it off to the winner?
No, we're going to send the present off to them. You can
they get to
mail
open it. That's even better. Yeah. Man, you get to open.
Yeah, here's a Christmas present from me and the partner.
Right on.
She's all about Christmas and loves it. So you can find me on YouTube, Cinephiles Gaming, at DadHammerNeo on Twitter, and of course I run the Facebook groups, especially the big Warhammer one. It's the one with 20,000 members, which just surpassed. So, yeah. And then shout outs just to friends. We were talking about like good causes before. I'd be remiss not to shout out Doom and Darkness, whose whole channel now, any monetization channel goes to charity.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's another good cause. His last one was Alzheimer's. I think he's still sending the money to Alzheimer's research at the moment. It's fantastic. So just go like, share, and subscribe his stuff because it all goes towards watching Warhammer and it all goes towards a great cause.
Right. So yeah, I'll second the shout out to Doom. He really, him coach, they really kind of helped to make this thing a real thing from just me just talking to myself, I guess. So Doom's a great guy. And one day I'll come down and kick his ass in Warhammer.
He's a good player. Believe me.
I can imagine. All right. Well, thank you for being on. Chat, thank you for hanging out with us. Good night, everybody. And you, good day. You have a whole day ahead of you now.
Yeah, whole day ahead of me now.